Hello and welcome everyone to the main event this week. I'm Meeta and I'm so pleased to be joined by our special guest, Jo Ellen. Jo Ellen, welcome back.
Oh, thank you. I'm so looking forward to this topic. I mean, I look forward to everything with you, but this topic I think is so important right now. So thank you for inviting me.
A pleasure. So whilst we're getting everyone settled in the room, I'll do a little bit of housekeeping. So our main events are always around 45 minutes. We try to keep them succinct. We know how much stress there is from time constraints in life. So we want to make this session really useful, really interactive, and we're also recording it. So if you feel like you want to write things down or you have questions, please know we're recording it, so you'll get a copy afterwards, but also you can put some notes in here to give us your thoughts. And we want everyone focused and listening and giving us your thoughts today, because the more you share, the more we can make this session tailored to you, and you can go away with solutions, which would be our aim fulfilled, if you like. Jo Ellen, I'm just going to run through the poll as well, just because this was your suggestion today, and I love that it was really straightforward and simple. The question in our poll today is, what is your level of stress right now? So we've got low, everything feels fine, no issues. Medium, I've got a few issues, but I'm coping. High, I'm not coping all the time. It's starting to feel too much, and then off the charts is when you start getting physiological symptoms. You're not sleeping. You've got anxiety, overwhelm, you're actually getting physically sick, and the feeling of hopelessness starts to seep in. And it's not a switch, is it, Jo Ellen, with this feeling? You never see it coming until it's too late almost.
Well, that's the thing about overstress, is that it creeps up just little by little by little. And then it's that old cliche of, how do you boil a frog? You either throw it into hot water and then you are off the charts, or you just put a low flame and eventually it boils to death. So that's often, that's what happens to me. Usually when I'm thrown into the hot water, I can cope. I've got all my little, all my capacities, but it's the slow, steady under eroding of my coping mechanisms that will get me.
Yeah. I'm also really glad. Obviously, this month is National Stress Awareness Month. We are bringing it from a work perspective because we're part of the same business community. We've worked together for many years. We're your client, you're our client. But the work that we've done in these webinars since COVID, I think, have just really always struck a chord with our audience. And I'd like to think it's one of our top 3 most popular sign-ups this year so far. So, but it's getting worse, isn't it? The title is How We Stress Less, Taming the Stress Beast, because as we said, it's one of those things that seems like a little pussycat, and I'm fine, I'll go for a walk, and then all of a sudden it's a lion. We're eating ourselves from the inside out, sort of thing. And so much of it is work related, but I think it's really important to remember, and I think I'd love to cover the self side, like what's going on for a person individually, but also what responsibilities they have outside of work that might then impact people at work as well. Because I think that's the responsibility of a manager or a director, a people leader, is understanding their people holistically. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's it. First off, I think you're absolutely right. We are in a situation where there feels a lot that's not in our control, and that just adds to our stress. So the price of things at the supermarket, or filling your, car with petrol, or charging it an EV, all of those things, that's just something that's not really in our control.
No.
So that impacts on us. And then there'll be something else. A child might get ill. You might get ill. Something happens at work. A deadline gets exaggerated, pulled forward. All the kinds of things that aren't in your control tend to be the things that will create anxiety and stress at a higher level.
Yeah. And let's not underestimate the world stage that we're on at the moment.
Yes.
And the fact that because of social media, what once upon a time happened somewhere far away and we heard about it once in a blue moon on the news is now continually as though it's happening right here in our neighborhood. And the challenge of that is, where do we where's our resilience for when something is needing to be dealt with here? If we're giving all our thoughts, energy, and everything to situations out there, so it's the balancing act has become so challenging. Social media accounts for so much success and greatness, but so many challenges that we've just, we're going to look back and think, God, how were we so? How was it so unregulated?
Yes.
And but we're not there yet. So we've got to help our people, and we've got to help ourselves to start to take some positive actions, even though government haven't put the legislation in place, the social media companies haven't, and it's just, it's pretty out of control.
And I think there's another element that I do think is fed by our insecurities and fed somewhat by social media, which is our perfectionism. And I think that we live in a state where perfectionism is attainable. That's the myth that we get with people who look perfect on, the influencers who are influencing us. Some are great. I'm not dissing that at all, but I just think that that standards are set that have nothing to do with us, but that we then judge ourselves against. And I think that level of perfectionism, I don't know if anyone knows, you may probably, why should I say this? Maria Kondo?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. She lives in a mess now. She's completely reversed her stuff around perfect neatness and only have things that give you joy. Well, she's had a child. Ha, 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 ha. Guess what?
No longer attainable and sustainable.
So, but it is interesting that she was such an influence. And again, I think she's great. I've learned a lot from her, but I think that we get a lot of pressure on how we are supposed to be. And the reality can be very disappointing. It can feel enormous amounts of pressure because I'm not doing it the way I'm supposed to do it.
Yeah. And if we bring this into the workplace and what's going on for people in the business, in the organization, 80% of people are saying they experience work-related stress. Yeah. Something like 6 out of 10 employees are saying that it's on the up, that it's not where it was a few years back. It's going up and up and up. So that 60% say it's getting worse. And 20% of illness is stress-related. I actually think it's probably a bit more, but people haven't quite realised that's the cause. I remember being at university, Jo Ellen, and I was sharing my last year with a biochemistry or biophysics or something like that. And essentially what she told me was 20% of illness is the illness and 80% of its manifestation is stress. So from a very young age, and I think we're all aware, but being aware and doing something about it are two very different things. And in an employment environment, it becomes about health and safety, best practice, being a caring and kind organization, valuing your people. For the main group, as a talent consultancy, we're all about bringing the best people in for our clients, but then retaining them and having a long, illustrious relationship that's win-win for everyone. So this stress challenge, it's been around for a long time, but I think post-COVID, there's been some new factors. I think hybrid working is one of them, right?
So hybrid working, interestingly enough, it took away some stressors
and added others.
Major stressors for a lot of people, but it added stressors, and it added stressors to the managers because either it's like you must be in the office so I can see you, because I don't actually know how to manage you from afar.
Yeah.
And actually, that's what managers need to do is have to have the skills to manage someone from afar and be able to notice things as opposed to out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. Actually, I also think that the people working remotely have got all the pendulum has swung from one extreme to the other, but now the other isn't really flowing either. And now it's like, well, we're looking for a new happy medium now because the world's moving in a different rhythm.
Yeah.
Also, we said that we'd cover looking at it little by little. So, what do they say about how do you eat an elephant? You bite off its toes, right? You start small and, you, as you said, you incrementally add things. So we're going to talk about small positive action that's going to help employers and members of teams to create significant, impactful improvements. And then they're going to talk about what healthy stress is, versus unhealthy stress. And I remember a coach for me, Jo Ellen, talked about starting a car, and I guess you'd have to have quite a few years to remember that, you used to have to press the clutch down, pump the gas, but not flood it, because you need some petrol. But if you put too much in, the car floods and it doesn't start. So the healthy stress is just enough to get revving. Too much means you flooded it, it's not going anywhere. So I love that analogy, because it's really obvious that we don't even realize when we're doing it.
Yeah, well, that's the key, isn't it? That we also are quite habitual. We need to be. And so we often don't notice that we're doing things habitually that need to change.
Yeah. So we've got some poll responses. Currently, we've got 76% at medium, so still coping, some issues. We've got 11% at high, not coping all the time, and we've got 5% in the off the charts and 5% in low. And it's always like that, isn't it? It's a bell curve. Yeah. But what I want us to do in this session today is to say that nothing is off the table. Sometimes I think we self-manage and we try to downplay our stress because that's what society has expected of us. And I think today in this room, we want to say, you know what, let's assume that we want to get to a point where it's not even medium, it's low. That's where we want to get to. So even if it's medium, high, or off the charts, that means only 5% are where it should be. Now, if that's the room, think about your organization, think about your teams. That's 95% of the people in your world are going to need support. So let's dig in. I want to get some interaction from the room. My stress is that people aren't hearing us or they're not getting what they want. So I would just love everyone. Thank you for your comments on the poll. What I'd love you to do is to put into the chat what things might be causing you stress right now. What examples might there be there, Jo Ellen?
Well, it could be just overwork, juggling too much, taking on things, not setting clear boundaries for other people. So you're being what my term is, you're being too nice. Yeah. So you take on more than you can cope with, and you don't let anyone know. Yeah. And you may be having conflict with someone, and that will cause stress if it's not resolved. And also what I call the hamster wheel, or is this stuff that's just going round and round and round and round. Yeah. And that just drags your brain into a kind of inertia. I mean, the brain is going round and round, but it kind of paralyzes you because it just feels that you can't find an answer. So you're just regurgitating the same information or the same complaint or the same distress.
So almost stuck, if you like.
Yeah. And the hamster wheel will create stuckness. Yeah,
that freeze. The fight or flight, but people freeze, right? Yes, they literally can't do anything. So we've got lots of people in the room, which is fantastic to see. It's really as simple as typing something in here, and I'm gonna type in work-life balance, because one of the things I noticed is that when we initially went off into lockdown, having time around my family was very, very good. But now I've realized that when I go to work and I can leave work at the office, it is a freedom that I haven't felt for a long time. Yes, there might be things I have to check, but I'm actually starting to see where I probably wasn't following what I teach and practice in our business for our teams. So we've actually got a comment here from Liz, who says unrealistic targets from management with reduced staff due to mass cuts. This is a really common situation. Thank you for sharing that, Liz. Right now, the world is everywhere you look, it's cost saving, it's uncertainty, it's mass cuts. I mean, it's job security. It's what are your thoughts on how people would be responding to that at work?
Well, first off, it depends a lot on what your relationship is with management, what the pipeline is to the people who are making these kind of unrealistic targets and expectations. Yeah. And, I'm reminded from the old early days of the Industrial Revolution in America, there was, you worked a 7-day week. If you don't come in on Sunday, don't come in on Monday. And that's
presenteeism.
Yeah, that's why unions were created, so we could have a weekend. So I'm not saying everyone should go out. Well, maybe I am saying that and get a union, but there is something around what's the communication gap. So it's not just the unrealistic expectations and targets, but there must be some gap in the communication to the people making the decisions that this is unrealistic.
Yeah.
And that
Well, it feels like it's one way, right?
Yeah.
Instruction, direction, instead of collaboration and coaching.
Yeah.
And I think management, really, the people leaders and the people supporters in organizations have probably 80% of the responsibility for the stress in an organization. Because they also have to feed it up to senior board level, C-suite to make these changes. Another comment from
Emily. This is brilliant. I mean, I'm sorry that your car got hit, but this is exactly what we were talking about before we went on air.
So Emily says that feeling constantly like you're just about managing and then something out of your control happens and you don't have the capacity. So poor Emily, her car got hit last night, and adding the admin of that has overflowed her capacity. So it's literally like the last straw, isn't it? The last straw that broke the camel's back.
If anyone's been on these before, this is my stress pot. So there's a nice pot. It's bubbling nicely, nice little flame. Now what's happened to Emily, which is too much stuff goes into the pot.
Yeah.
Okay. And it spills over. And that is, there's another thing, which is, that is the deadlines that Liz talked about, unrealistic targets. The flame's gone too high. Yes. And that also tips things over. So it's in one way, it's very good to know what is going to overflow your stress pot. But that is exactly what happens to me, Emily, is that I'm okay. And then the stuff that's not in my control, it's too much. It goes into the pot, and shoots up my stress levels.
And so the analogy for managing that, again, is two halves, isn't it? Self-management, and then there's managers and employer responsibility. So if we talk about the self-management, there's keeping, it's not bubbling, it's keeping us some space in the pot.
Exactly.
Right, decompressing, giving yourself headspace. We were talking the irony that, all the things that help us keep that capacity for emergencies without overflowing, meditation, stretching, walking, you mentioned acupuncture, all the things that help us are hardest to access when you're feeling overwhelmed. You get into that freeze mode and all of a sudden you don't know where you're going. And the tough thing about that is, in a business, in an organization, that manifests as, disengaged. It manifests as low work success, performance reducing, mood swings. I mean, people literally go from being, an A-star member of the team to falling off the chart completely. And so the managing is one thing, the person knowing themselves and the work there, but also the managers noticing how to become more aware.
Yeah. And also being, I know, listen, if I wouldn't be in business if managers were good, because line management is our most popular course.
Yes.
But it's your job in two ways. It's your job as a manager to pay attention. It's also your job to let people know what's going on as an employee.
Yeah.
And not being stoical, not feeling that you can cope, not putting a false face on things. It's not going around moaning and complaining. It's just, this is the reality. Yeah. So in Emily's case, I mean, I don't know your situation, but it would be saying, I'm going to need an hour from my day to day. I will make it up at some point, but I need an hour to sort out the admin on my car, as opposed to how do I fit it into everything, because it's tipped me into overwhelm. And that's the thing, is that most people are kind of flexible. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to happen for everybody, or even in Emily's situation, but there is something about this new thing has come in and I need more space to be able to cope with it, as opposed to adding it to my list.
And also, absolutely, because so often in an environment, you can see people going through something. You're busy in your own work as a team leader or another member of the team, and before you realize it's the end of the day and you haven't checked in. Now, actually, for a manager, that's their number one priority, is making sure that the environment is conducive to success and happiness, engagement, productivity, whatever your measures of a positive and successful working environment are. Got a comment here from Joe who says, not feeling good enough within the team due to lack of knowledge. Joe's relatively new in the role, in a brand new industry after being in a previous role for 10 years. So there's quite a number of things there, aren't there, Jo Ellen? Because it's all the variables that create the uncertainty that start to create the stress.
Yes, I think that, thank you for being so honest, Joe. We hired someone through you who was switching industries. And I think that because we are the company we are, it's like, give them extra space. Now that may not be happening with you, is that person is going to need more time to get up to speed than someone who's been in this job before. So I think that it's also, it's sometimes putting your ego aside and saying, this is what I need to know. This is what I need to learn to be able to, start working at full capacity, as opposed to, and I don't know if this is true for you, Joe, but often people who don't feel comfortable in a role will fake it. And that's why I talk about line management training. We started doing line management training. Oh, by the way, Impact Factory is going to be 33 years.
Wow.
Day after tomorrow. So way back when, in the early days of Impact Factory, when we really started to tackle the whole line management, was a company that hired people within the company, and they were put into a managerial role because they were so good on the floor, and then they left after 6 months. And it was because they were basically thrown in at the deep end, and they'll figure it out because they were so good on the floor that they'll know what to do once they start managing people, which was not true. And it continues to be not true. People continue to be promoted, which is wonderful. Their skills are acknowledged, but they're not given the backing. And I think in Joe's types of situation, again, we don't know the specifics, it's being able to say, these are the things I will need to know in order to be really good at on my job, as opposed to, I think I should know it all. And that gives you that feeling of, I'm not good enough.
Yeah. And the very fact that in a new environment where the company have entrusted the future of this role and the value you're going to bring to you, very often we can get stuck in our own heads rather than, let me go out and get some feedback. Let me talk to my peers. Let me talk to my managers. Let me talk to, maybe my customers. How am I doing? Where could I improve? I'm from a different industry, so this is where I'm winning. This is where I'd love some more insights. And I think that being proactive in that, and remember, it's a scale. There's no finality. It's not good enough, or, yet might be the word you want to bring in. I'm not there yet. I'm on that journey.
Yeah, I think I want to add to that, which is, again, it goes back to the perfectionism that I should know everything. And aside from, major things like, brain surgery, we can learn lots on the job. I'm continually, after 33 years, learning loads about my business. However, what happens in Joe's situation, I've seen it so many times, of not feeling good enough, you forget the reason they hired you. Yeah. And it will be for your personality, for your engagement, for the values that you hold, and it loses sight in the panic of, what am I supposed to do here? And one of the things, and this might not be your industry or the work that you have, Joe, but one of the things my experience always has been is that people will really like helping. They really do like helping, giving you a helping hand. Could you spare me an hour to take me through this process? We're doing it all the time. I mean, we've been doing it really since the pandemic, because everything is always, changing and
as well. It's hard.
We had one. We ran an internal training just a couple of weeks ago on the fact that we're getting a lot more requests for neurodivergent training people who are managing neurodivergent people.
Yeah.
And it was great because we all learned something new, and nobody felt intimidated by saying, I don't know what to do in this situation. And I think that not so much admitting, oh, I don't know this, but saying I could really use some training on X, or I could really use an hour of your time to take me through this, is enhancing of who you are and how you are seen. It doesn't necessarily is a show of weakness. It's a show that you know what your skills are, and these are some of the gaps in them.
Yeah. I think, what you said about supporting each other, I think that the hybrid, and I'm going to go into our 3 different sections and start pulling some ideas together, but I think hybrid working has also made that much harder. Communication that was, just absorbed by an environment, or information that you could glean by watching, listening, that's much harder to ascertain now, because people just aren't necessarily in the same space learning from each other by osmosis almost.
That is true to a degree. And they're not in the same space. However, one of the things that I'm just reading my notes here, one of the things that we've noticed, particularly since the pandemic, is a lot more mentoring programs. That really helps with that hybrid gap. That the more mentoring programs there are, the more people integrate more quickly. They feel supported. They feel taken care of. They're getting knowledge from someone who's wise, has been around. Or you have reverse mentoring, younger people, maybe not as experienced, but have a different outlook on things.
Yes. Using tech in a more efficient way, effective way. And actually, you speak about management training. One of the areas that we get a lot more requests for and get a lot more involved in is inductions and onboarding. Because in a similar way, a lot of what was taken for granted has to be deliberate, structured, and, re-evaluated time and time again. Information doesn't flow in the same way, and I don't think we can take that for granted anymore. And so if we were going to look at, little by little, how an organization can take small positive action to create these significant improvements for individuals in a team, where would it start? I mean, I always go on about job descriptions and clarity of knowing what your job is. Is that the first? Where does it start for you, Jo Ellen?
Well, I think first off, what you just said, it starts with the induction. Do you have an induction program that lays out the expectations, but also what is the ethos of the company? Is it a company? It may be a company where they don't want to hear from you.
Yeah.
But if your induction process is healthy, it means that it's a two-way process. It isn't you just shoving information at somebody. It's actually finding out how someone works, what's their best way of doing things, are they someone who likes lots of targets? Are you someone who likes little bitty targets? Yeah. All of those can be discussed in your induction, ideally in your interview, but certainly in your induction, so that you're setting the tone. Yes. You're setting the tone for how you want to be as a manager or how you want to be as an employee.
And I'd agree right down to being deliberate about when are our touch points. Let's start them weekly. They might go to every other week if they need be. What I say is let's keep that hour in the diary. Yes. If you don't need it, you don't need it, but it's there for you. And that way, because ultimately we want to get to a point where managers are there to support their people, not where people are reporting in. We want to empower.
Exactly.
And people feel less stressed when they feel that they have a say. As you said, Jo Ellen, the stress comes from unexpected or in things that are out of control.
Yeah.
Problems with solutions should be fixable and not stressful. So it's how we can identify the difference and then start working together in a working environment. And I suppose, a safe working environment isn't necessarily the practical, physical things. It's
health and safety type of safety, safeguarding, you could almost say.
Exactly. It's having a mental health expert. It's creating a buddy system for people. It's creating mentorships. It's making sure that whatever the structure is, that feedback goes both ways. So if mentors and buddies are in place, they can feed it back to a manager. Don't just sit with it. Make sure there's a flow. It can even be a WhatsApp. I know there's so many WhatsApp groups, but it can be as easy as you agree it with your manager. But for the manager, they will need to feed up to the directors and chiefs, right? Yeah. So, and I think along with the job description and clarity of what people's role is, don't assume because you discussed it with them when they joined that they know where it is. Now, use your annual appraisal or use one of your kickoff annual meetings to go with everyone again and work through their role, reflect what went well last year, reflect where the gaps are and where they might need coaching, training, or support. Refine it all.
Yes.
It's like clearing out the closet and tidying it all up again. Not Marie Kondo style, but Marie Kondo understanding that it's never perfect. That's like a point in time. Life is a film that goes up and down, and just gotta stay within the lines, sort of thing.
There are, different organizations work differently. And I don't know, I think of this, you'll still have control over your team. And one of the things that we do, we are a small organization, so it's easier. It's quite easy for us, but we have monthly sort of commercial meetings with the leadership team. But once a quarter, we have face-to-face. And so we have face-to-face commercial meeting, and then we have a full company meeting. And a lot of that is acknowledging what people have done well. So there's lots of things. And then looking at what does work well as an organization, and then what doesn't, and how can we address what isn't working well. Often it tends to be something where there's duplication. So how come you're doing that and you're doing that? All right. How can we fix that?
The system's broken.
It's a systems thing.
Yeah.
And then it gives people an opportunity to think ahead. And also, because we are a safe organization, to be able to say, I don't think this is working really well at all. And it's both as a team, so the different teams, but also individually. I'm not working at 100%, and these are some of the reasons why. And some of it could be home stuff, but a lot of it will be because either the system isn't working or the communication is broken down. But because we have those often enough, we can do something about it, as opposed to waiting until it's explosive.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do want to say that we keep saying this, the stuff that's not within our control. So everything's bubbling along, and then someone's scheduled to go on holiday. Bye-bye, have a great time. And then the other member of the team goes off sick. Oh, okay. And then the third member of the team had an operation on her shoulder, and she's on long-term sick. Oh, wait a minute. We suddenly have nobody in that team. And, the directors will step in and manage things. So things happen that we do not have any control of. And the sense of not having control often causes more stress than the actuality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, actually facing it, dealing with it, having a conversation about it and putting solutions into practice is less stressful than just sitting with it.
Yeah, and going, oh my God, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Which is often people's reactions to things. I don't know what to do.
And I think people feel that there's a stigma around, we always say bring solutions, and people don't bring a problem, bring a solution. But sometimes I think we have to destigmatize that people can freeze and they can be stuck, and they can say, you know what? My stress or the volume of what I've got means I'm actually struggling with clearing out, my head to create the space to bring a solution. And I think it starts with senior leadership. I think it starts with people at senior levels saying, this happened to me. Well, guess what? It's not a sign of weakness, because we're getting through it and we're dealing with it to come out with a solution. Yeah.
I do want to tell my husband's story because I think it's as relevant for work.
Yes.
So my husband is a catastrophizer, and he knows he's a catastrophizer, but we are coping with a lot of things right now. There's a lot going on. There's health issues. We're selling our house. We're going to be moving to London. I'm looking, Impact Factory is having a discussion about selling the business. Not that I'm leaving. It's just being acquired. Anyway.
Yeah.
But for him, his brain goes and it's just this big jumble. So I said to him, I want you to carry a notebook around for a couple of days, and any that goes in your brain, write it down. Don't judge it. Don't try to fix it. Just write it down. And then we're going to have a meeting. So we booked a meeting, and he just read me his notebook.
Yeah.
Okay? Everything, not in any order. And then because I am an ordered person, I put it into categories.
Yeah.
And within those categories, it's like, what's the first step to managing each of those things? Now, suddenly all that zzz in his brain was nicely ordered, and that's what he needed. And I think sometimes people can be overwhelmed and need to just go bleh, get it off their chest without any, as you say, no solution, but someone else can say, well, I've noticed this, and there's a pattern here, or okay, let's categorize that, and then look at the first step.
Yeah. And that's coaching, right? You just hold space for somebody.
It's classic coaching. And I have a much happier husband now because he just has to look at the list of categories. You know.
But people also then feel heard, seen, listened to, respected, valued. And by doing that, they can almost fix their own challenges after that.
Yeah.
You know,
also just looking at what is in your control. There is always something that will be in your control.
Yeah. And I think in a working environment, therefore, let's create environments where employees have a say on their duties, promotional prospects, what safety they want, what support they want, create that mental health support, create a human resources manager who they have access to, or their direct line manager, but talk about it. Don't just put it in a, once a year announcement and then leave it in the top drawer. Remind everyone, even Microsoft Teams has an intranet now. If you have no intranet, use your Teams stuff. It's so clever where you can share and remind. And, a lot of people have life assurance policies, health insurance. So many of these have so much free support for mental health now. So again, even in our company, sometimes we look and say, wow, we've got all these free additional services that everyone's not using. Let's remind everyone what they can actually access without any additional cost. And I think then it's the manager's role to create some time and say to them, right, let's give you an hour. Let's give you an extra long lunch break today. Take your lunch, but take an hour to look into some of these. It'll pay back in dividends. And sometimes, but managers get worried, if I do it for them, I'll have to do it for them. You only have to do it for them if they need it as well, and then they'll be better too. So, I think people watch and evaluate how businesses and organizations operate and treat their people. So I think the loyalty and the effort to overcome will just rise exponentially.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think that there is that rigidity will also create the stress. And I think I said before this began that someone on the team was just feeling a bit overwhelmed. And Robin and I just said, go home. Just go home. Not work from home. Go home. Just take the second half of the day. It's not a sick day. Just go home, because just her being able to go home and cry or cook something or
just a
whatever
change
it was that was to change, that just to go, and that I think is, we have the capacity to just say, tell us what's going on.
Yeah.
Let's see what we can do. And sometimes it could be that, and sometimes it could be just listening. Sometimes there is a fix. Sometimes there is actually something we can do. That's why I say we have our meetings, and suddenly we'll see, but that's really quite easy to do, but nobody asked about it. So nobody noticed that it was something that could be easily fixed.
Yeah. And if one person brings it up, the chances are there are other people. So communication, understanding that, one fix, one solution could actually help many.
Yes. I think there's something, we are in essence, we're a training company, we're a communication company, and, communication can get screwed up really quickly. And sometimes it's just like a decision is made and no one was told about it. And it's like, what just happened? How did that happen?
And in this day and age of phones, you can even do a sentiment feel or a temperature of the room with a text poll to your people if you're bigger. I know we're both from boutique organizations, but communication, especially with hybrid, because this is what I was going to bring it to, was to say, go home. And when you mentioned the situation, I said, what about the challenge that comes from being at home and people, working in a hybrid organization, which once upon a time was stress-free? Sometimes people are finding it more stressful now. How can people deal with that?
It's interesting. I've been counseling somebody who works for a local authority, and so they're quite rigid about, clocking in and clocking out.
Yes.
She does work from home, which she loves because she has a lot of social anxiety. However, she rang me one day and said, well, I've got this deadline, and she's never missed a deadline, and she's really respected in the organization. And I said, what would give you some pleasure right now? What would make, and she said, oh, if I just played a video game. I said, well, what is going to hurt if you take an hour and go play that video game and then come back refreshed?
Yeah.
And she said, ooh, am I allowed to? And I said, who's going to know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And she did that. And when she reported in, she just said, yes, that's what I needed to do. I needed to not, because what was happening is that she was sitting at her computer and not doing any work.
Yeah.
Okay.
And presenteeism has taken on a new shape. Presenteeism at work was, physical. It was sitting at your desk. It was being the last to leave. Whereas now the presenteeism is, you may do the work hours, but you're sitting there because you don't want anyone to think you're not sitting there if you don't respond.
Exactly.
It's really unhealthy, and it induces stress. It really does.
And of course, what happens?
No, I was just going to say, it doesn't add any value to the organization.
No, it doesn't. And also, it begins to devalue you. So, when we're stressed, we don't reach for the broccoli, do we? We reach for the biscuits. So we're also, there's nothing wrong with eating the occasional biscuit, but the stuff that helps us usually goes out the window.
Yeah.
The massage, the walk, the phoning a friend, the things that actually make us feel better in ourselves.
Yeah. And it requires more discipline.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think one of the things we're definitely trying to encourage everyone is to get out for a walk at lunchtime. Whether it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, the whole hour, whatever it is, whatever you need on that day, but make it count. Is get your steps in, get some fresh air, get a change of environment. It's good for everyone, every company, the organization, the people. It's good for teams to see each other doing good things for themselves, and it encourages everyone to treat themselves better.
Isn't it interesting that, again, unions fought for weekends, they fought for lunch hours too. And that's certainly when I entered the workplace, someone said, this was in America, don't be near the elevator at lunch hour because you'll be trampled. Everyone going off. And it was, it was a slight, obviously humorous, but there was a sense of you went out for lunch, and that began to change. Somehow people began eating at their desk, and somehow it was an expectation that you wouldn't take a full lunch. That wasn't a spoken expectation, but also because managers stopped taking lunch too, or I'll just zip out and get a sandwich and come back. So that's a mindset as well. It's a mindset of, I deserve my lunch hour.
The policies, the stress policies that you put out as an organization may be really, supportive, collaborative. But if we're not walking the walk, people will do what they see, not what's written on a page, So I think for me, one of the big lessons was about when I go on holiday and actually switching off.
Yeah.
Because if I don't show that I am out when I'm out, and of course I'm there for emergencies, but actually do I need to be checking my emails all the time? I always say, if it's urgent, phone me, and so this last, I was away for a week with the family, and I really made a concerted effort, even though we got back in the country on Friday, probably didn't do, it's my twins' girl's birthday, so I didn't really have the time, but in some organizations, there's an expectation, they're back in the country, they should be checking their emails. I tried as hard as I could to leave it as long as possible because, one, people notice and they feel then they have permission. And this doing, the last element of our conversation, and we are on time, but I'd love to spend a couple of minutes talking about recognizing when healthy stress evolves to unhealthy stress, because the holiday is such a great opportunity to decompress, even if you have a staycation. But if you've got this presenteeism, this, I better show I'm checking in, I better show this, no, that is, and it's got to start from behaviors of leaders in the organization.
behaviors in leaders, definitely. I do think that there is something about your own self-care. Work should never be that important. And that, to me, is around your sense of purpose and your value of yourself in the world. If your sense of purpose is to take care of other people by presenteeism, perfectionism, all of that, you're doing the wrong thing.
But it's unsustainable.
Yeah, it's unsustainable. But also, we do have to take responsibility for ourselves. It is around setting boundaries. So I'm going to go back to Liz's comment about unrealistic targets, to be able to say to someone, this is unrealistic. Can we have a conversation about what would be realistic?
Yeah. Or ask why, so respectfully help me understand.
Yes.
Respectfully help me understand why, just maybe give me a bit more insight.
Give me the big picture so I know what this is all about, and then I can give you my input. The other thing is, because when people say, give me solutions, it isn't necessarily that you come with a solution, but you can come with this is what I can do.
Yeah.
Not, oh, that's too much. But okay, this is what I'll be able to do by Friday.
Yeah. And
without the justification.
Yes. Because when you bring the right people in, you induct them right, you manage and support them right, you give them the feedback, you coach. When they do come to you and say, this is where I'm at, the trust and confidence is so high that there's no doubting, there's no undermining, there's none of that. It's like, right, okay, well then what can we do to support, help, eliminate, move forward? Because I think, Jo Ellen, the one word we haven't used today, which is used a lot out there in the world, is burnout. And the fact is that it's real and it's debilitating. And when healthy stress becomes unhealthy stress, essentially what you're leading to is where people are burnt out. They will have to go long-term sick. It takes months to recover. They'll probably be a shadow of their former self for a very long time. And the fact that it was preventable by just some interaction and some engagement, it's an expensive and unkind situation for people to end up in, where there could have been an intervention far sooner. So we're going to do a session on burnout because we've hardly been able to touch it today. But Jo Ellen, as always, time seems to go at warp speed in the room with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you
insights
very much for having me.
A pleasure.
Thank you, Liz, Emily, and Jo, for your input. That's really stimulated us. So it's been great. Thank you.
It has. And thank you, everyone, for signing up today, for making this an important subject for yourselves and your working environments. The poll, I'm about to publish the results, but 75% are at medium, 20% are high or off the charts, and only 4% of this room are okay. So if you're going to look back at your workforce, your environment, and think 96% of my people need some of what we've talked about today, just start the conversation. And Jo Ellen and I are here. We're going to send you the recording, our contact details, pick up the phone to us. Stress management doesn't just happen when they're working with you. It's in the hiring, it's in the supporting, it's in the, it's in the managing, the appraisals and the training, it's in everything. So, let's create the wins and let's help each other.
Great.
Brilliant. Well, Jo Ellen, thank you so much. Everyone. Thanks to everyone, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.